This is Jay Carpenter of the Phone Word Forum. Today is Wednesday, December the 26th, 2012, at approximately 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And today the Phone Word Forum is going to be having a 2012 year-end summary and talking about some of the topics that we've covered this year, how they fit together, and then we'll also be talking about topics that we might cover in 2013. So far we have Robert Schaefer on the line. Robert, did anyone else join us while I was setting up the recording?
I just got on the call. I haven't heard anyone, Jay.
Okay. You asked a question about port requirements on WebRTC a while back. Did you ever get that answered?
It was port requirements on what?
I think you were asking. I think you were asking if it was WebRTC required. I think it was port 80. And did you ever get that answered?
I don't think they ever got back to me. I don't remember. Okay. I don't recall getting an answer. No.
Okay. I've invited somebody to be on either the January or the February call who's an expert in WebRTC. So hopefully we can have a good conversation. Hello, did someone just join?
Hey, Jay. Jay?
Is that Paul? Yeah.
Yeah, how are you, man?
I'm well. Is this Paul?
Yeah, good. Yes, Paul Bells. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you, Paul. Paul, have you heard if there's any plans for a toll-free summit in the spring?
No, I haven't heard anything, but I've discussed with a couple people, and I'm going to be putting one together. Probably for we'll just get through the winter, the early part of next year. But
okay.
It'll be a little bit different than maybe some of the past summits.
Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna. The original intent of the summit was accomplished, which was to get as many of the leaders of the industry together as possible. Now, ultimately, if we do another summit, I think that the goal is to get people who really want to work together and do something. It's not about numbers. Quite frankly, people who want to come and share their thoughts, ideas, comments, debates, etc. It's what we need. People who want to come just to be there and listen and write information down and not participate doesn't do really anybody any good. So I'd rather a smaller group where you accomplish more than a bigger group that, just to say we had a big group.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's been a demonstrable amount of people in the industry who've made it very clear that they want to work together, they want to share ideas, they want to help each other out, they want to do things for the good of the industry, and those are the people I'd rather get together with, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, makes sense.
That's kind of more of the direction.
I think there's a lot of interest among the legacy participants to have another toll-free summit.
Yeah.
The last time it was mentioned, there was a lot of interest expressed, even though it was kind of a false start for having another summit. So.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely, and I think there's new people that I think that I've certainly met since the last one, and other people in relevant industries that could be expanded to. I just think, it's a question of taking the time to put it together for the right reasons. And I've gotten certainly comments from, a number of the people that I talk to on a regular basis that, we should, took a while to get it going, and we got it going, and we should keep the momentum. And if we wait any, too long, we just won't have another one.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's something that has to get organized and planned. And again, I don't mind having differing views there and intelligent debate. That's okay, but just want to have the right people there that could help everybody move forward. So at least that's my perspective. Unless I'm organizing it myself, I don't make all the rules and regulations. In the past couple summits, there was a group of people and we talked about it, and then we agreed on different things. So certainly anybody who raises their hand that wants to be involved in organizing it will. It's not the Paul Fowl Summit. We'll get together with a couple of people and say, okay, what do we want to do? What do we not want to do? And who do we want to have there? And who do we not want to have there? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, as you approach that date, if you'd like to use one of the Phone Word Forum conference calls to, get some feedback in terms of topics and so forth, we could certainly.
Yeah, I think it'd be actually a very good idea to use the Phone Word Forum, and I think we could mix it in with an interesting topic that we want people to participate in, and maybe the concept of the forum of a summit will get more people on a group phone call to talk about an issue that comes up at the same time. So we can kind of do two things at once.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah,
all right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started?
Who's on?
Robert Schaefer's on, and Paul, I don't know if you know Robert, but Robert and I worked together for a number of years on the Technical Advisory Committee for the Country Code 1 ENUM LLC, and Robert has a wealth of experience in ENUM trials and was with MCI and then Verizon for a number of years. And
Great.
So,
hello, Robert. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Paul.
How are you? And Robert, may I ask, where are you now? What are you doing now?
I work for an engineering firm in Oklahoma City. We do consulting engineering for rural carriers.
Oh, great.
Anything you two would like to cover today? I apologize. I did not get an announcement out last week, like a week in advance, like I usually do. So that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. I'm the only one here in my office, really. People are, still out for the holidays, and
yeah.
But I figured I'd dial in. It was the end of the year. I didn't know who would dial in and see what everyone was up to and talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we got
I just thought it was
situation here, the skeleton crew.
Yeah.
Right. So I figured I'd just jump on quickly and say hello and see if there was, what everyone was chatting about.
Yeah. So I thought it would be good to just kind of do a recap of 2012 and some of the topics that we've covered. I'm guessing that, the topics we've covered over the year have seemed to be kind of dispersed and, maybe no rhyme or reason to them among the community, because there's such a broad change that's going on among the industry, and so I was kind of hoping we could tie some things together. So I'll ask you, Robert, out of the topics that you've seen, what's been the most interesting to you? What do you think are the most relevant topics among the telecommunications, media delivery, and, for that matter, toll-free industry?
Well, the area that I'm interested in the most, I guess you would say, would be the evolution of the network, and in the context of what you just said, and I don't know if this has been discussed, or maybe it should be Jay, is, as you know, in the PSTN we have query response for routing through the SS7 SCPs. And as you also know, the network is evolving away from that signaling platform.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I would be interested in some discussion about the displacement of that and what technologies would be the replacement, if you will, for those functions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's an area that I'm very interested in, and I value your opinion, Robert, in terms of, based upon your experience, which I think is vast. I really value your opinion in terms of what you think would work and what would not work in that realm, because I think it's a big question mark from many dimensions. How could the SF7 architecture be replaced or phased out? So,
yeah, it's not just so much in the toll-free context. That's one element, but there's other types of queries that go through the system that are kind of foundations for certain services. And I don't know that it's clear if we have a migration plan.
Yeah, from what I understand, we don't. And that's in the process of being formulated among the various advisory groups to the FCC. So, anyway. Paul, what's your topics of most interest at this point?
Look, my topics have always been, as you know me, I'm not, pretty much 50, 80% of what Robert said, he could have said in 4 other languages because I don't understand them. I'm not a technician. I'm not a technical person. I'm more on the sales and marketing side. Always have been. Not that I live my life where let the cards fall where they may, but there's others in the industry who are more on the forefront of the topics of routing and how things are going to get routed and what changes are coming down the pipe. The topics that always interest me the most come down to the relevancy of our assets, of our marketing tools, how we make them more relevant, continue to make them viable, and how the industry works together to do that. That's always been that was the whole reason behind the summit. The whole reason for connecting with other companies in the industry is I think that we're more powerful as a group. I think that our industry still sits on that same precipice it always has of becoming, in one direction, less relevant, and in the other side can change its perception and become, and stay relevant, so to speak. So those topics, have always interested me. We've done some things on our end to try and change some of that, but I think there's still a lot more to be done.
Yeah. And so I'd like to go ahead and pursue that line first in terms of the marketing, the relevancy of what we think of when we think of the public switch telephone network. And I'd be particularly interested, Paul, to get kind of a summary of where you see the industry, because I know you're out there talking with potential users day in, day out. You've got a really, what I would consider a good finger on the pulse of the value proposition that at least is in the minds of the general public for toll-free telephone numbers. And, I suspect you're getting some sort of feeling for the general perception and need and value case proposition for, what we think of as legacy and traditional telephone services in general. And before I kind of turn it over to you, Paul, I'd just like to say that I think all of that is relevant to sort of set the stage for what you asked about, Robert, which is what's the transition plan? Because, I would say the biggest thing that I hear out of the conversations with the FCC and the support groups and CISRIC and all that stuff, like, we had Richard Shockey on a couple times over the last year and a half. The driver really seems to be how do we have a transition from what we're accustomed to in the legacy network to keep in place all the 911 emergency services, public safety needs and things like that. And I'm not hearing a whole lot of voices saying that, we need to keep the legacy use case in place that we're accustomed to for telephone services with, voice and all that sort of thing. So the driver seems to be a concern for public safety and emergency services versus a concern for, how do we transition, voice services into the contemporary. And I've got a few thoughts on that, but before we get into the transition part, I'd appreciate it, Paul, if you could tell us. Well, first of all, Robert, do you have any thoughts about that, sort of the business driver around voice?
Well, I think there's a general lack of understanding by a lot of the players about what it means to turn off the PSTN infrastructure. We've got a lot of things that are dependent upon it, and maybe what we need to do is make a list of those and raise the awareness of, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. You said, that everybody's concerned about emergency services as well. They should, but there's a lot of other things, some of which make people money, that are dependent upon that capability. And I think the reality, Jay, is that in much the same way that we're dealing with IPv6, I think that we're not going to flip a switch and it's going to be suddenly the new world. I think we're going to be in some kind of a hybrid environment for some time to come, and it just has to be clear what is or isn't going to work or not work.
Mm-hmm.
Another way to say what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think, a lot of people are asking themselves that question at this point. So,
Jay, is it still? Is your sort of I don't want to say platform, but your big concern that and you believe that people just aren't paying enough attention to is that the powers that be are looking to do away with the PDSN, and if they do, that's going to immediately damage or take away the industry, the toll-free industry as we know it. That unless these type numbers operate on a different platform, they'll cease to exist. Is that what I continue to hear from you?
Yeah, technically, Paul, the first part of a toll-free telephone number call relies upon the PSTN. And this is different than a call that's placed on a geographic number because of the very architecture of the technology the toll-free telephone numbers rely upon, because we can have multiple carriers handling various parts of a toll-free telephone number call, and because of the unique nature of the toll-free telephone number technology, you got to have the PSTN to do the database lookup on the front side, or at least that's my understanding, and seems to have been confirmed by the experts that I've talked to. Now, there might be some cases where if on the wireless side, if a carrier detects a toll-free telephone number has been dialed and they're confident that they can terminate that call pure IP to IP, they might be doing that now. But, you know, that's not the way toll-free telephone number dialing and calling and call setup is designed. So the answer is, in my view, is that, you know, you've got to have the PSTN in place today to set up a toll-free call.
Okay. And this is Robert. The reality is that the technologies are available within the DNS and the IP networks to replicate much of the functionality of what Jay's talking about, but there's no standard, no consolidated effort to do so. There's a organization and a financial and administrative commitment that's been made to process number administration a certain way in the PSTN vernacular, and that same thing has not been created in the new realm. It could be, but it hasn't. And so I think we have the technical capability to do what needs to be done. It's just that none of this has been sorted out.
Exactly. And a key part of that is you have to, well, in my view at least, you have to definitively identify the end user subscriber. And that's been a vexing issue, policy-wise. So I would say that's part of the policy side of it. The use case, if you go out and you talk to let's say a younger person, somebody in their, teens or 20s or whatever, I don't think they have much of an idea as to what a toll-free telephone number is or does or anything else. I think they could basically care less. And, my experience has been that telephone numbers in general they consider them pretty much obsolete because they rarely dial a telephone number. And a telephone call, for that matter, is in general, I would say, unwanted because they consider it to be like an interruption. People in their teens and 20s are very much used to asynchronous communication like email and text messaging and so forth. And they like it that, they can respond when they want to. And, a telephone call in general, I think, is, unless it's planned or unless there's, a certain use case where they've got to have real-time communication, they just generally avoid, what we consider telephone calls. So that's kind of my assessment in terms of the use case and value proposition around telephone calls. I think they're much more attuned to Skype calling, where they can do some instant messaging, and then if they want to, have a voice connection, they set up the call. And I think toll-free telephone numbers are generally on the kind of a lower rung compared to geographic numbers when it comes to setting up a telephone call. But having said that, I think we're always going to need voice communication. I think there's a strong value proposition, strong opportunity set to usher in a new paradigm for voice. And one of the people we had on the PhoneWord forum is a fellow named Martin Geddes, and he's been writing quite a bit about a new paradigm for voice called hyper voice, which is kind of a new set of services that includes a new way of talking to each other. And I'm rather excited about what he's writing about in that realm. I think that the one thing or a few things that are positive about toll-free telephone numbers is because you can go in and pick, your individual number and get a number that suits your needs. I think that's been a big and lasting value proposition around toll-free telephone numbers. And, hence, I think that's why we've seen this incredible appetite for toll-free telephone numbers, because they're allocated in a different way than geographic numbers. So that's kind of my view on the toll-free telephone numbers. And I think generally because you can go in and you can get an individual telephone number that spelled some sort of phrase, I think that's still a big value proposition that keeps toll-free telephone numbers attractive.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that's what keeps them attractive. I think one of the issues is that I believe that we need to change the perception. I don't think most people are getting, at least my clients, looking at a toll-free number because it spells something. It has nothing to do with toll-free anymore. They're not necessarily, they're not getting them because the caller doesn't have to pay to call the company anymore. Most people have unlimited plans, either with their home service or certainly my cell service. So I think that we as an industry, have to kind of change the perception of, you want this tool just because, hey, it allows someone to call you on your dime and not theirs. But I think the concept of, a vanity, being able to have phrases with it, make them memorable, is still very relevant in any marketing, genre. And I think that the issues you brought up, relevant to voice changing in a certain generation being less attuned to voice, that has nothing to do with toll-free. That's toll-free, local, anything. There's a generation out there that prefers to communicate electronically. But at the end of the day, that doesn't change the power of voice, and the smart companies understand that they want to connect with their consumer or their buyer, and the ones who do it in the right way are benefiting from it. And I think that we saw a revolution a little bit away from it and then back to it, where the auto dealers and certain brands that had moved away from voice completely, tried to push everyone on the web, realized that, wait a minute, we kind of messed up here, that there's a power to voice. So I don't believe that voice is ever going away. It is certainly relevant in the terms of one-to-one two-way communication with a buyer. But yeah, there's a generation that does a significant amount of the stuff that we used to do purely by voice, by text and email, and voice sporadically. But that's, I think, a phone issue, not a toll-free phone issue. I think in the toll-free world, we just have to continue to evolve our assets, so to speak, to do more than just complete a voice call, to do some of the things, Jay, I know you've been working on, some of the things that we developed where we could send a text message back to a caller, we could send a coupon code back to a caller who dials a toll-free number, we could engage them in a social media platform. I'm talking to some people who are familiar with technology that are going to work on making toll-free numbers textable so you can text to a toll-free number. There's no reason why we can't. So those are the issues that that I think people need to focus on is making our way of communicating viable and in demand. It seems to me to be, but we need to keep it going in that direction.
So, Paul,
I'm less concerned with them disappearing one day because of the PTSN gets shut off.
Yeah. Well, what do you? I mean, you're out there talking to potential users day in, day out. What would you say is the general temperature for telephone services and voice in general? What?
Well, look, we're definitely finding it. It's harder and harder to find clients. We're certainly finding the traffic to the site and people calling. Getting numbers licensed is always a challenge. You're up against lots of things and new digital communication, texting, social media pages. We're driving everyone to websites. We're always up against that. But as much as that then gets us frustrated, or we start looking to that side of the coin, saying, hey, the market's going in one direction. Then you pick up clients who call and instantly license a number. I put on a client recently within the past week and a half who signed up for a number and is paying multiple thousands of dollars a month for a number. It's just getting to the people who get it, and they are very reactive to it. And even recently, now I put together a relationship with one of the largest radio stations in the country, based out of New York. I've been in their offices 3 times with their entire sales force, now up to 60 salespeople, and they are recommending them to every one of their advertisers. They are now pitching it with every radio campaign they are pitching, that they should have a memorable number, in their marketing. And it's a new relationship that I think will grow, and as we demonstrate success with them, will lead to others like it. And in the short period that I've worked with this company, I think we've already put together 6 deals, and it's still a new relationship. So that's very kind of a positive sign for us.
Hey, Paul, there's one thing I wanted to comment on what you said a moment ago.
Go ahead.
And I don't think you necessarily meant it the way you said it, but it was your comment about numbering going away.
Right.
And I don't believe that the end of the PSTN will mean the end of telephone numbering. I think that that we're going to need a personal addressing mechanism in the new world, and that the closest thing we have to something that consumers understand is telephone numbering, and that people are used to using them and associate themselves and their businesses with those numbers. And I don't think that domain names will take their place, because people just don't understand them well enough or to use them in the same way that they use telephone numbers. So I think the PSTN will go away, but the numbers will be.
Robert, I agree with you completely. I just know that was always one side of the coin. Hey, we got to address this, guys. If PSTN goes away, we go away, and I've never believed that. But I'm less concerned with that. I mean, one of the things I always talk about in, going to your other point, is when I'm at trade shows and I'm talking to people, is the nice thing about our asset and what we offer to people is there's no learning curve. Everybody knows how to dial a number, and the rules don't change. And you don't need to be a degreed expert to understand them. You don't need to have a degreed expert on staff to understand it. Unlike the web and the new technologies out there, and I'm a perfect living case for my own story, in that I spent tens of thousands of dollars over a few years optimizing a website as per Google standards. Had that site ranking on the first page and got lots of traffic and lots of leads. And then one day, a bunch of programmers woke up at Google and said, "Hey, let's change the algorithm." It was about, 8 months ago, this Penguin release or Pigeon, whatever they called it. And in one day, my entire business disappeared. One day, I disappeared from the rankings for every one of my major keywords. That's a real important point that I point out to business owners, that if you want to put all your money on the web, first of all, you need multiple degreed experts to understand this, to do it for you, to optimize it properly, to stay on top of it. And at the whim of somebody else, your marketing can disappear. So I'm not saying don't be on the web. I'm not saying don't be on social media, but having that phone number is a great tool to have that doesn't require any of that stuff, and no one really is changing the game on you, and they get that. Business owners also get when the fact that if you're just driving people online to these web, all the web latest greatest, you're driving them to the competition. So I might be looking you up, but if I'm looking for a lawyer and I'm looking you up and I have to go online and right below you is a guy that says, hey, I've never lost a motorcycle case, I might call him too. Business owners understand that.
Right.
And most business owners I talk to also understand that, they're chasing the latest and greatest. Today it's their website, and then it's a Facebook page, and now it's a mobile site, and then it's a YouTube channel, and as they just get it right, somebody throws something new at them. And so what I'm talking about is, hey, chase them all down. I do the same thing. But that one communication, that constant of having a number where everybody can reach you and knows you, and wants to speak to you, that's a valuable client. And I get them to agree, you just got to get them to agree to it. I ask them all, if you get somebody on a phone, are they calling anybody else? And by and large, business owners are pretty, egocentric, and they say, no, if I talk to them, I'm going to land that client. So I ask them, well, why don't you want to get them on the phone as quick as possible? And they do. It's a harder conversation because, every day in the paper, every day on the web, every day in magazines, we read about the latest and coolest online digital marketing thing, right? We don't read about the power of voice, We don't read about something cool someone did with talking to people. We read about some new, symbol on a website that's supposed to mean something, and that was one of the important things I wanted our industry to focus on was, we need to get our story out there. We need to tell our story. We need to, show our story. We need to show the success and the case studies of the power of simple voice, And I think there's a whole generation that will ultimately get tired of, maintaining 55 micro conversations at once on digital platforms, as opposed to a one-to-one communication with a client. And look, there's been studies done. I mean, they did a study was about a year ago that they created 10 customer service problems with major brands, and they said, what's the quickest way to solve one of these? And they had one brand do it with Twitter, and one do it with email, and one do it with online, in multiple. And in every case, the quickest way to solve the customer service problem was over the phone.
Yeah, quicker. I think when you're talking about service issues, clearly, a real-time conversation is what customers generally want.
Yep.
If I've got a problem, I want to talk to the company that provided the product or service and have them help me fix it
quickly. Look, I understand that for certain products, if I'm looking to buy a pair of 32, size jeans, I could do that, online. But if I'm looking to buy a certain product, whether it be legal services, insurance, mortgages, cars, I want to talk to somebody. And the companies that allow me to do that and make themselves available and say, hey, I'm willing to talk to you, and deal with your issue, make you happy, because are the ones, in my opinion, who are going to win. And I also think the consumers are changing, and I think there's no reason to shut this avenue into consumers. If a consumer wants to go online and look at you online, that's okay, but there's no reason to shut the path for the consumer that wants to talk to you. So I don't think voice is going anywhere. I think we just need to do a better job of communicating, the power of our tool and the power of voice, and also some of the things that I saw a big issue here with Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast. There was significant outages here, right, with power for a long period of time, right, phone lines down, businesses out of whack. For those businesses that strictly had a regular, what you call, I guess, a local number, those guys were incommunicado for weeks. Business owners I know that had a good vanity toll-free number with us, their businesses were down. They contacted us, and we rerouted those calls to their cell phones, which were working. And that was something that their local vendors couldn't do. But no one really heard about that. So I had business owners whose business lines were down, but they were getting calls to their personal cells, which were working, which allowed them to speak with their customers and deal with problems. No one really heard about that. That's kind of a cool little thing that we had, a little advantage we had, a nice thing. But we didn't, it didn't make a ripple.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate for us. What did make a ripple was that people were able to communicate via Facebook, and that was cool. But we didn't make enough noise as a group to say, hey, here's another power of what we offer. A little bit frustrating. There's been probably, there's a group out there that created this thing called star dialing. In their short tenure of being in business, they've gotten more press about what they're doing than I think that our toll-free industry's gotten in the 20 years we've been doing what we do. That frustrates me, because they've got the dollars and the PR mindset to get their story out there. And quite frankly, I think what they offer is crap. It doesn't hold a candle to what we do. They've basically gotten to the point where they're almost giving it away now. But they get written about all the time. Frustrates me.
Well, I agree with both of you, and I think that the value case for telephone numbers is very strong, and could get stronger, assuming that there is new functionality that's associated with telephone numbers. But having a fixed length address, I think, has huge value proposition that a lot of people overlook.
Hey guys, I don't want to cut anybody short because I've said a lot. So if anybody, I want to hear what everyone has to say. I probably got about 5 minutes only because the snow's starting to pick up pretty bad here, and I want to get back home before the roads get terrible. I would also like to maybe, Jay, I know you do these ones. Maybe we want to pick this up next week. You want to do another call quicker because I think people were out. But I think. And, it's been my fault, too, because I haven't jumped on a lot of these calls. But I think the key to getting people together to share these ideas and then maybe action stepped after it, is critical. Because I think we can move places. We can move the needle together, as opposed to, individually running in different directions. I just don't want to jump off a call when if someone has something important to say. I see the roads getting worse out here.
Yeah. So, Paul, what would you like to see in 2013 in terms of topics?
Well, what I'd like to see is the issues of being more collaboration on not only how we could all work together and get our story out there, but also how and what functionality can we add and change to our assets that we can work on that's doable. And I think the tactic, and I don't know if it's a tactic, if that's the right word, of, hey, we better get on this call and all do this because, toll-free is going to become obsolete in 5 minutes. No one listens to that. But the fact that, there are things we could add, because we as a company have done a couple things that weren't done 2 years ago that I think are very relevant. The fact that area codes, are becoming less relevant, and licensing numbers the way we do it. People always had a problem with, well, what if people move with their current cell phone? Well, how do those calls get routed? Well, we've solved that. Having numbers do more than just complete a voice call, being able to send, doing what the star numbers do, being able to send a text message back, being able to build a mobile fan database off of your number. We've done that. I think with more collaboration, we can do more. I've now, last week, had a conversation with some pretty smart guys, and I said, well, could someone figure out for me, why you can't text to a toll-free number? On voting, you have to text to a short code. Why can't you text me? Why can't you text hello to 1-800-Flowers? Why do you have to only call it? And I've got somebody now who's going to look into it. He thinks it's very doable. So I would like to see more collaborative, efforts on all of our parts to work together to push our industry to the next step. That's what I'd like to see more of.
Okay.
And maybe a couple calls with guys like Robert and yourself that could take the marketing sales guys of the industry like myself, and there's a few of us out there, and kind of help us, maybe have a couple education calls, that it's not just a lecture call or forum, but there's actually a call that someone like Robert's going to get on and explain in somewhat layman terms the architecture and what this all means to us. I'd like to see it as well.
All right. Well, good points, Paul. We appreciate your input, and I'm thankful for both of you guys being on the call today, and it's not the end of the call, certainly. I'd like to address Robert's question about the transition. Once
Paul, good luck with your snow. We've just already had our storm here in Oklahoma, so we kind of sent it your way. Sorry about that.
No worries. I look forward to connecting again soon, guys, and we will connect again, Robert.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.
Be well. Bye-bye.
So, Robert, I think it's good to have this conversation of, the business use cases and the technology side, because they dance together. And
I think maybe if you could think about your what you're going to do this next year to kind of try to blend the two together in some useful discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's interest in both camps, and of course that's not always easy to do, but with the right people, I think you could pull it off.
Yeah. So what do you see as the real stumbling blocks in this transition conversation, let's say, if not implementation, from the PSTN into an all-IP network? What would you say are the biggest hurdles?
Well, I mean, it's ultimately going to come down to what are the business drivers, and I think there are some technical issues, but there's also some technical solutions. As we found out in many cases in the standards work, that those technical solutions sometimes translate into advantages or disadvantages competitively, and so there's forces out there with specific agendas, and they don't all agree. So that a lot of times that gets solved by policy. So then we wait for policy, and sometimes that doesn't come, and if it does, it isn't clear. And so I guess those are kind of the higher level things that we're going to have to go up against. But I think, like I said at the beginning, I think one of the ways to combat that is to bootstrap everybody up in terms of what the understanding of what the problems are. What are the impacts of changes that we make this way or that way? And if we better understand that, then we can more easily think about whether or not we would support or not support going down a particular path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are you following what's going on in the Technology Advisory Council for the FCC, the CISRC, and so forth?
Well, peripherally, yes, but that's kind of a side hobby for me now, because I've got a real job to do here down in the trenches, and those things occupy a lot of my time. But yes, I'm trying to follow it.
Yeah, Rich Shockey seems to be deep into that process, and he's been on a couple times and kind of shed some light, but and he's I think he's expressed some frustration that the planning process is going slowly at best. To identify those various elements and so forth. But from what I can see, there's definitely a lot of interest in the area, and they're based upon AT&T's written comments to the FCC. They're very keen on getting this moving. So I don't know. I'm also watching what's going on with WebRTC, and I'm wondering, how is that going to impact the network issues? All the IMS and session border controllers and all that infrastructure that's in place. Would WebRTC obviate those elements, and all of a sudden you've just got peer-to-peer connectivity via browsers? You have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't claim to have gone into those waters too deeply, but just on the surface from what you've said, my reaction is that the larger forces in the industry like to maintain levels of control, and hierarchical network element-based communications versus direct peer-to-peer communications would lend itself more to having a gateway and having a higher degree of control. And so I would think that those that wish to maintain such control might oppose any solution that doesn't give them that degree of control.
Agreed.
My reaction to that.
Yeah, totally agreed. It's just I'm not sure it can be stopped. Because,
right, and I mean, it doesn't even matter if it makes the most sense, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure, absolutely. But the nature of web real-time communication and basically rich media enabled browsers, I think starts to disintermediate much of the architecture that's out there today. And I mean, that's my layman's understanding of it. But however, I see at the table the big companies, the carriers as well as some of the key vendors are certainly in the WebRTC conversation. And
well, I think that one thing might cause them to give a second look at some of that, and that is, another thing that's as important or more important to them than control is making or saving money.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can understand the business case behind, if I push capability to the edge or to the peer environment, then that saves me millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure that I would otherwise have to deal with, then maybe that makes sense. So you might be able to sell it that way.
Right. And I think, without a doubt, there's huge cost savings and simplicity plus an increase in functional power, at least as I understand it, via WebRTC. It's just that they, then all of a sudden there's a whole question about, well, what's the business model around that?
Yeah, now the vendors, for the most part, the vendors aren't going to like that.
Right.
Okay? Because they're looking forward to selling all that infrastructure.
Right. But I think that, I think that the carriers still hold a very valuable position among consumers in terms of the trust. People trust. They may not like dealing with the large carriers, but they trust them. They trust they're going to get, reliable service, I think, for the most part. And,
yeah, I think expectation would be a better word than trust. But
yeah, exactly. The expectations are that, hey, you're going to get good service or some sort of reliable service. Maybe not good service, but it's going to work with the large carriers. And, I think there's still an opportunity for them to sort of reformulate themselves and build upon that, reliability expectation. But I think they're really facing something akin to what IBM was facing, a decade or two ago, where IBM had to basically transform themselves from, we sell mainframes and hardware and stuff to, we're a service company. But, I really think that that's what's facing the major carriers, not to mention that the major carriers now have sort of detached themselves from a geographic area, a location, like, our major carriers in North America being confined to North America. I think, companies like Telefonica are starting to compete on a global basis now. And there's a whole new service set that's emerging. So I think it's an interesting time, and I think all that plays into your question about, how is it going to happen that there's going to be a migration from the PSTN into an all-IP network. And, I don't really know. I think there is this long laundry list of points that have to be, or at least are perceived to be, vital to making that transition. But even once you've identified those points, there still has to be some sort of pathway to either just say, okay, here's date certain, figure it out, or put some sort of carrots out there for people to migrate off their old equipment and service set into something new.
Yeah, and I need to go because I got another meeting, but I'll make a last comment about that, and that is it seems like some of the industry efforts, like meetings and groups to try to get their arms around some of that, has been done in secrecy and not in an open manner. And I think that's unfortunate because I think people, the more that this list that we're talking about is known and what the issues are, and the more input that they get, the better, I think, and rather than, the smoke-filled room somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think transparency, openness, collaboration is key because it's way too big for anything else. So, all right, Robert. Well, Happy New Year to you and your family, and thank you for your input today. And hopefully we'll have somebody either in February or January that is on the forefront of WebRTC, and we can get a handle on exactly where that's at and what the time frame is.
Okay, Jay.
Okay.
Thanks for hosting this, and you have a Happy New Year as well. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay. Thanks, Robert. Bye.